Hello chess fans, today's video we're going to go over a basic endgame which is queen versus pawn on the 7th. Some of the time it's winning, some of the time it's drawing, and here I'm going to show you when it's winning, when it's drawing, and some exceptions to the basic rule I'm going to show you right now. So you might be wondering, what are the circles on the board, what do they mean? So the red squares are actually where if the pawn is there and the king is defending it, it would be a draw. And the green squares are where it's winning. So you might say, wait, isn't that just pretty arbitrary? Well, it's not very arbitrary because there's a lot of stalemating tricks that white can actually use to draw the game. So I'm going to start with this position to show you why the this pawn and this pawn are going to be easily drawn for white. So the way to draw this is to just run your king in the corner, and the queen has nothing better than to do stalemate. There's only really one trick. So let's look at this position. White is in check, so white will move out of the way, check here, and white will move out of the way again. Notice that if white went the other way, he'd lose the pawn, or they would lose the pawn, sorry. Yeah, so here, if black does nothing, like if black goes here, it's stalemate. It's because white's king can't move. That's why this would be a draw. But there's just one trick you have to watch out for, and it's that if check here, here, check here, you don't want to go back into the corner because then they have mate. You just go back here, and they have no way to stop you, really. And maybe they could check you like this, but all you have to remember, go back to the corner, and you're drawing like this. And if you're black, it's winning if the pawn is up here. All you have to do is check the king so that the pawn can't get here. So now let's look at our next position and why this pawn is also drawing. So as we remember from the start of the lecture, I told you that these pawns were drawing, and now we're going to see why this pawn is drawing. So let's say black makes a nothing move, which is king e2. Obviously, for black to win this position, he needs to bring his king up and then take this with his queen, and then he'd just be up a queen. And we know how to win those endgames, I'm sure. So queen e2, king g8. And so now white is getting out of the way to promote his pawn, so we have to check him so that he can't do that. And here the strategy comes in. So the queen just zigzags forward, and here we see the strategy, which is king f h8, a similar strategy to the other position. And now this is a draw because if we ever take the pawn, it's stalemate, and if we ever bring our king closer, they promote. So there's nothing we can do here to draw, and that's all you have to remember, is that your king has to go in the corner. Now notice if the king went here, it's still drawing unless the king gets too close, as it can go here. What you have to do is go here, check. Wait, it might not be drawing. Oh yeah, it's still drawing because like they can't go here because you go here, and if you go here, well then we can similarly go here. And yeah, wait, there's no check. So if white brings their king forward, here, check, and then we could still go to the corner. So you always have to remember that you have to go to the corner if you have the f pawn. And similarly, again, just don't let the pawn get to the 7th. I might go over the pawns on the 6th in another video. And those are winning. So you just have to not let the pawn get here. And so now we're going to see why these pawns are winning. So these pawns should be the same as this one. And the idea is that the king, when it's here, there's no stalemate. So what black is going to do is, first, he's going to try to bring his king because the pawn can't promote. And the second the king comes out, we're going to give check. He's going to go here maybe, check, here, check, wherever, check, attacking the pawn and the king. So the king has to go here, and then we go check. The king goes in front of the pawn. You have to remember this. This is a pretty easy, basic endgame. And then you bring your king forward. And you just repeat this process. So if he goes out this way, check. They have to go, let's say, here, check. And if they go here, then we can bring our king closer because they're not trying to promote. So let's say they go here, check, here, here, here. And you might be worried about the threefold repetition. Don't worry. Our king is moving one step closer every time, and the king comes in. And what's going to happen is the king is either going to come in this way, and then the king is going to have to go here, or the king might come in this way and we'll pick up the pawn. So this would also be winning, and it's the same process for the e-pawns. But now we're going to see some exceptions. So here I have a question for you. Is this position winning for black? Is it a draw, knowing everything we just learned? What is happening in this position? Just take a minute to think of if it's winning or not. So what we would know from what I just showed you guys is that it should be a draw because we have the h pawn and the king can come to the corner. At the moment, the king can't come to the corner, but if the queen ever moves, then the king's going to be able to go here and get to the corner. And if we move our king, white is going to promote. So the only really winning attempt here is to play queen here to stop the pawn from promoting for this move. So white obviously wants to have their pawn to promote, so they would go here, and I don't think there's any way to actually win this from here, because black's king is simply too far away to deliver any sort of mating net or anything like that. So this position, I'm pretty sure, would be a draw. So next let's look at another position. So this is a similar position to the last position, except now white has a pawn on board. So what would that mean for the position? Does the position change from winning for black? Is it still a draw? Just take a minute to see if you can think what would the result of this game be with his best play. So if you saw the line, you may notice that when the king gets this h8 square, usually it's a draw. But that is if white has no other piece on the board. But here white has his pawn, so after queen here, defending the pawn, king here, defending the pawn, check. And if he goes this way, then we take the pawn. And if they go this way, it's no longer stalemate, so black can go here. White pushes the pawn, black goes here, white pushes the pawn, and, well, black has their choice of mates with queen f3, queen f6, or queen g7. So this is another endgame that you probably won't see in your own games too much, but it's a fascinating endgame based on the drawing of the queen and the pawn on the 7th. So next, let's look at this game, or sorry, this position. So this is another position with the h pawn, and you would think, well, this is also a draw, right? Because like we have the h pawn again. But here you can see that if black's king is close enough, they can actually weave a mating net around white, and here actually it's just mate in 3. And I mean, you can take a second if you don't see it immediately. If you don't want to think about it, you may even pause the video, but I'm going to give it away now. It's queen b4, king here, queen here. Remember to always calculate checks. I remember when I was showing this to someone else, they said queen h6, which is also a nice move because white only has one legal move here and then checkmate. But queen f6 is a little bit nicer, and after king g8, queen f8 would be mate. So this is a position where you just have mate in 3 from this sort of endgame. And so now we're just going to move the king one square back. And now my challenge to you is, this is a decently hard puzzle, and it's a puzzle I might have composed this myself. I just put it on the board by myself, but it might be a real puzzle from another person, so I don't want to obviously say that it's mine. But here, I challenge you to try maybe even putting this in on a chessboard, or maybe taking the board editor, putting this position in, because it's not that easy for even players up to maybe 2100, I would say. I composed it, so I obviously knew that it was winning, but it's pretty hard to play for black. And so, the winning combination starts with queen g5, and if white goes here, it should, I think, transpose, because after check, they still have to go here. So here, check, king g8, and now we see the special move. We notice we had to get our queen to this square, so that when our king comes here, queen c2 would be mate if they promote to a queen. So after king e8, so here we would go king e8, and notice that if they promote to a queen, we have queen f7 mate. A very nice mate with the queen taking away the king's only square. So, and also, they can't go here. So what white would have to do is play knight h8 into a knight. And this is, I mean, it's not too difficult to see here, but maybe this endgame would be slightly difficult, so I just want to show you how to win it anyways. So the most accurate continuation is queen g5, king here, and king f8, because we can't go to this square, and white doesn't have anything better to do than go with knight g6 check. We'd go here, 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 and now there's no way to stop this, so white has to give up the knight. And this is just a pretty simple mate, but I thought I'd throw in some finesse of this. So yeah, that's pretty much basic king and queen pawn endgames on the 7th. Note that the most important thing to remember about this entire lesson is, winning this. This queen maneuver is probably the most important thing about this entire lesson. To give the queen check to come closer, and then give this check to make the king go in front of the pawn. And you also have to remember this rule about these pawns, these pawns being draws and these pawns being wins. So if you can't remember that, this is probably going to be difficult for you in the endgame, because these endgames are actually fairly common. And so, yeah, that's the end of today's video, guys. If you liked the video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. And if you have any other endgame things that you want to know about, I'm sure it would probably be good for me to refresh anyways. So I'll also cover anything you put in the comments. I'm thinking about doing something like Rook endgames next, because those are very complicated as well. Maybe doing the Lucina position or something like that. So that's the end of today's video, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.